Thank you for meeting with me. Can you talk about your experience fighting fires?
My experience in working fire, so I started in 2006 when I graduated high school. I was looking for a way to pay for college. I was fortunate enough, my biology teacher actually had a job in the dispatch center. He let me know that there was an opportunity if I wanted a summer job. And back in those days, you could just drop off a resume and they could hire you. And thanks to him, I started my very first fire season in 2006. In 2009, I got on an engine crew and did my 120 days with them. After doing that, that let me apply for a permanent job. And by the time I got done with going to school, I wasn't interested in the degree I had anymore. So I started to apply for dispatch jobs, and I got one with the Burns BLM just to the west of Vale. And I've been in fire ever since, and just recently got an administrative officer job where I'm no longer in primary fire, but I am responsible for the incident business that happens on fire.
Can you describe your role as an educator?
So in 2017, I went down and helped teach at a Women in Wildfire boot camp located on the Black Range District on the Gila National Forest in New Mexico. And I went down there really to explore options of getting women more interested in fire. It turned out it was a wonderful recruitment tool. I brought it back to my FMO here in Vale, and he supported me enough to put on my own program here. So what we do is that we bring in anywhere 25 to 30 women from across the United States and teach them 130, 190, which is the basics of wildland firefighting. This gives them the skills needed to either decide if this is a good career option for them or decide that it wasn't as glamorous as everybody thinks it is, and for them to make an educated decision on whether they want to be in wildland fire or not. And at the end of this, they'll be certified, but we'll still have to apply for jobs for the following fire season. And we also help them go through USA jobs and discuss some of the other nuances like our culture. I have guest speakers that come in from all over that discuss their history in fire and the pros and the cons. Just like any job, we have pros and cons.
What are some of the things that you wish people knew about firefighting?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things going through Senate and Congress right now about wildland firefighters. I don't think a lot of people know that our titles are actually forestry technicians, and that is not the job we do. I think a lot of people think that we're uneducated, and we're not. We're very educated. We know more about this job than anything else. Like I said, I've been doing this since 2006. And for some of the qualifications that I had, I probably could have been a doctor faster than I could have been an IE dispatcher. And I think those are things that people don't understand. Other things that people don't understand is what it takes to be in a family and to be here, because really for 120 days a year, usually from June all the way through September at the max, you're not at home and you're missing birthdays and holidays and a bunch of other stuff, and it becomes a toll on the family that you've left behind. Even though you make a family when you enter into fire and whatever crew that you're with, it's still really, really hard. And I don't think people understand what they're asking from their wildland firefighters that are fighting these fires. And it's just important to me that they know the sacrifices that they're going through when they're doing this.
What are the requirements to be a firefighter?
You know, I think at least some of the struggles that high school students have coming into our job is that it kind of takes a step back in time when you do a job like this. And I think what they really struggle with is that they're so connected to the world through their phones and computers, and that's not a bad thing. Those skills are definitely needed. But you're going to remote areas where there's not any service. And I think it's really, really hard to be disconnected from their peers, especially right after their senior year. Like your senior summer is where you're supposed to hang out and have these wild times before you lose touch and go off to college. And if you have a job like this, it's really difficult to do that. Fire will become your priority. The fire doesn't care that you have a concert to go to. The fire doesn't care that there's a movie. The fire doesn't care that you have a date. Fire doesn't care that it's your birthday. Those are things that are really, really hard to come to terms with. And that we see them struggle. We've tried to update our stations where we have Wi-Fi, but it's probably not great. I mean, in just teaching this weekend, I've struggled with my Wi-Fi several times trying to get it to download classes. And I think that's really where high school students struggle the most. I would say after your first summer, you get used to it and you start developing new friends, especially friends that you have at the station or on your engine, and your life will just shift a little bit and it'll become a lot easier after your family understands what you're doing. And I think that's another thing. I have a lot of parents that really struggle with the idea that their kid is gone for 16 hours a day. They don't know when they're coming home. They don't understand why they can't make it back in time for dinner. It's not an 8 to 5 job. So I actually had a high school student work for me last year. She was 18 right before her senior year, so she was actually still in high school when she came to work for me. And there were several times her mother and I had to have a conversation about, yes, she's gonna have to drive home in the dark. Yes, she's gonna come home at 2 in the morning. I promise she's here. Yes, she's working. But those are transitions that are hard for everybody. So the other thing I would tell somebody that's just coming into the job is make sure to have these open conversations with your family. And it's okay to invite them to show them where you work. The more you can share, I think the more comfortable they'll be with everything.
What's it like working outside for long periods of time?
People are stopped living so much on the farms or in those kind of environments, and they're really living in the cities or the suburbs or whatever you call it. And I don't think there's a lot of people that know what's out here. I think you'd be really surprised to learn what's out here on BLM land if you actually took the time to explore it. And when you're out here, like I said, I think you learn a lot about yourself. If you can disconnect, then all of a sudden you're gonna have to be trapped with yourself. And it's really nice to kind of lose that for a while and not have that hustle and bustle. And I think when you find that you disconnect from your phone, you actually have a lot of time to focus on other things that you want to focus on. But I also know it's really, really hard to be disconnected because I believe the kids call it FOMO, the fear of missing out, that just because you're here, that doesn't mean everybody else's life stopped back home. And so those are sometimes two things that are very, very hard to connect at the end.
What are the physical requirements of the job?
Oh, there's so many things. And so we're not going to talk about the hot shots because they're just in a league of their own. I think what we should talk about are the basics. If somebody wanted to apply for this job, they're probably going to start either out on a hand crew or an engine. And I would recommend an engine if you get the choice. Once you get those 90 days, you can really go anywhere. But for that engine to qualify for the job, you have to do a pack test. A pack test is that you have to walk in 45 minutes with 45 pounds, 3 miles. And I think people think that's really easy, but the way the pack is that sits over your chest, so that already constricts a lot of the breathing that you do when you work out, and it's a lot of weight bearing down on you. And I think people underestimate that. We get a lot of people here from the coast, which is living at like 600 feet. We're pack testing at 2,500 feet. I cannot even imagine pack testing in some places like Denver. Like, that would be insane. So I think that's the very first physical hurdle that you would have to cross in order to do this job. After you get this job, you'll PT every day for an hour. It'll either be a group hike, a group run, whatever it is. It's usually a team. And if you're the slowest one on the team, your team notices. So you try really, really hard to stick up, stay the pace with them. After that, and you're actually on the job, if you get a fire, you could possibly be running that fire up to 16 hours every day until that fire's done. So when we talk about a shot crew, that literally is 16 hours for 14 days straight. And you'll never understand the wear and tear it takes on your body until you actually go through it. And some of the other things that people don't realize is in the summertime, at least on the Vale district, it can be anywhere from 100 to 110 degrees. The heat, you're doing it all day, and then sometimes you're even on the night shift, which means you're sleeping during the day when it's 100 degrees. So I mean, there really is no time to really relax. And this is also a job where you might not see a shower until maybe a week into it if you're lucky. You might never see a shower in 14 days. And so the physicalness and the exhaustion that comes with that is You have to experience to believe it. And the final thing I remembered is smoke inhalation. Not only are you running alongside an engine trying to put out flame with your hose in 110-degree weather, but you're also sucking in flames and working right next to a hot fire all day. I don't think there's anything else that I can compare that to.
What do you love about teaching young women how to become firefighters?
I think the thing that I love the most is, I've been doing this for a long time, and being in a buggy and being in an engine and even being in a helicopter just isn't as cool as it used to be. It's kind of just become my norm, my day-to-day, this is what I'm doing. And it's really inspiring that when I get new students that haven't experienced anything like this, that it's still new and shiny to them. They're not jaded and bitter from all the policy and the politics that happen in a government job, but instead they come in with this fresh approach, and to them it's still really, really super and exciting. And it's so nice to see that, and it kind of reminds me why I got into it to begin with, and that it is still super exciting. There's not a lot of people on this planet can say that they've been on a Type 4 engine and have ridden into a wall of flames to put it out. There's very few people that can do that job, and to know that these women want to do it is very inspiring.
What advice do you have for young women who want to become firefighters?
Yeah, I think one of the toughest things is when you see a wildland firefighter in a movie or on TV, they're always men. Very, very rarely do you see a woman either on the crew or in the picture. And I think one of the best examples is Coors Banquet, the beer. They do a collaboration every year with the Wildland Firefighter Foundation about raising funds for that foundation. And there's never a woman, ever. And it drives me crazy because we do have women in the field. And so I don't know if they're just ignoring them or what it is, but when you have a culture like that, it's really hard to show girls that this is an option for them. They don't even know. It's not something that they're even thinking about. So doing camps like this gives them an opportunity to come into an environment that is male dominated, but in a place where if there's only girls, then maybe they'll feel a little safer. It's a lot easier to come in and talk about women's specific problems with other women than being told by a bunch of dude FMOs about how easy it is. And so it's really empowering that way. But one of the things I would say is, even if you're the only girl in the crew, be honest to yourself, be confident about who you are, never trade in your values, and you'll come out in the end.
What's it like to be a mentor?
Yeah, I definitely think there's different levels to mentorship, right? So here in the Women in Wildfire Boot Camp, I have 28 girls this year. Obviously, I'm not going to be a great mentor to 28 people, but what I can do is that I can introduce them to my own network and actually get them in touch with people that would be way more beneficial than me. Like I said, I was a dispatcher. So if somebody wants to be a hotshot, I'm not going to be the right person to talk to, but I do know a lot of hotshots. So I'm like, okay, here's their name, here's their number. I would reach out to them and tell them that you're interested in doing something like this and ask them if they're willing to be your mentor. And that's kind of where I can help. I really am just the starting point for these girls, where I can look at their resumes, get them to apply, introduce them to them, and kind of a launching point. And that's kind of my goal here. And every once in a while, I'll meet one that I talk to for years on end. But the other thing that I do here is that I'm actually trying to be a mentor to my cadre. So a lot of members of my cadre are only been with fire for the last couple of years. And so I'm trying to help them and guide them to build their own career so they can, who knows, maybe do their own camp someday. Yeah, I would say if anybody's interested in this profession, doing a camp like this is a really easy way of doing it. And obviously there might be hundreds of people that want to do this, and I'm only taking in 28. Even if you don't have any fire experience, a lot of the entry-level jobs don't actually require any experience. I think it's 6 months of general work experience. If you worked at McDonald's, you can count that as your 6 months and still apply. Do not be intimidated by it. It is, I don't want to say it's super easy, but I would say that once you jump into it and get into it, We will take the time to train you on everything that you need to know to be safe out on the fire line. We do not want to hurt you. At no point is a sagebrush or a tree worth more than our firefighters' lives. So we make sure that we train you up so you can be safe and you can go home to your families. It's totally okay to come in with zero experience, and you'll build on that. After a couple of years, you'll be an expert just like everybody else that you've been working with, and all of a sudden you'll be who the rookies are depending on.
What advice do you have for students who are trying to find their way?
I would say that I was really, really fortunate. So I started here on the district as a GS3, which is the bottom of the totem pole, and I've reached all the way to a GS12. That is not common in our career, but I know it's because of those mentors that I reached out to and the people that believed in me that got me here as quickly as I did. A lot of that came from me, and I recognize that, but I also know that there's no way that I would do it alone. So be brave enough to reach out to people and give them that phone call. The worst they can say is no, and it's totally okay. There are other people that you can reach out to. Find somebody that's going to help you along.